Well, good afternoon. As some of you know, I haven't always been a deacon. Actually, I've had several careers. But my first career was a butcher for 18 years. Toward the end, I worked as a butcher and store manager for a man named Big John. His real name was actually Joachim, after the father of our Blessed Mother, and whose feast day we celebrate today. John was old country German, and he was huge. He was easily this tall and that wide, biggest man I ever knew. And no task was ever too big. And when someone would call up with a seemingly impossible request, like needing to feed 5,000 people on a moment's notice, he would pick up the phone and tell the person, that's nothing, we do that for you. Like I said, no task was too big for John, and there was no one like him. As a spiritual director, one of my favorite questions to ask people is about their image of God. Is their image of God that of the old man in the sky? Is it a barefoot Jesus? Or that of a loving grandmother's lap? Their image of God says a lot about their faith. Well, my image of God is that of Big John. I remember one day I was in the meat cooler, and I'd made a rookie mistake. I'd accidentally hung one of the meat rollers on the wrong side of the rail so that it was stuck between the two support beams. It wouldn't go anywhere. And I loaded that thing with 360 pounds of meat. Just as I was standing there looking at my mistake and about to unload it all and start over, Big John walks in. But he has his arms full, about to make some sausage. So he reaches out, he says, I fix it for you. He reaches up and easily picks it up, lifts 360 pounds with one hand, fixes the hook, and says, I fix it for you, my friend. I do anything for you, my friend. And that is my image of God. That whenever I'm in a situation and I'm troubled or not sure what to do, I hear God's voice with a German accent tell me, I fix it for you, my friend. I do anything for you. I think it's a beautiful image of God, too. About a year after I quit working for John, I went back to visit him. I had quit to go back to school to get my MBA, and it was 4th of July weekend, and John was sponsoring a fundraiser for the city to help pay for their fireworks later that weekend. I popped in late that morning, and he was very excited and told me all about the cookout. He showed me all the food they prepared and all the meat that was in the ovens. He told me that he'd purchased a brand new barbecue rotisserie machine, one that would hold a whole steer on a spit, a 700-pound steer. It was a real showpiece. It was enclosed with glass. Well, we drove down to the park to check out this piece of equipment to see how it was coming along. And no sooner did we got there than John got a call to go back to the shop. And he left me behind. Well, suddenly, as I was standing there, the mayor, the police captain, and the fire chief all came up to me. And they asked me, what should I do? I go, what do you mean, what should we do? I said, well, Big John said that you were in charge. And I said, oh, he did he? And I smiled as I realized that he had set me up and had put me back to work. I then asked, well, how many people were you planning on feeding? And they said, well, between 4,500 and 5,000. But then I thought of Big John, and like a true disciple, I said, that's nothing, we can do this. So I began to direct traffic as we set up all the tables and chairs and organized everything so that the food lines flowed smoothly, no traffic jams. We did feed 5,000 people that day, but there was no miracle of multiplying loaves, as John had provided all the food. I had merely helped with logistics. With a lot of teamwork on both ends, both back at the shop and cooking the food, and at the park, arranging everything so it flowed smoothly. A lot of teamwork. We fed 5,000 people, and it went well. Today, we have another example of how teamwork can help to feed the multitudes. It's right here in our midst, and that is the Helping Hands Initiative. There are millions and millions of people who are starving around the world, and Helping Hands is planning to try and feed them. Our parish banner is in the back of church, and you can see our progress to date. Looks like we're about a third of the way through. In our gospel last week, we heard how the crowds had followed Jesus to the other side of the lake. And as they were hungry, Jesus began to preach to them. They hadn't come for food to feed their stomachs. They could have gone home for that. No, they were starving for more of Jesus' teachings, for his word was good news to their souls. And we see this week that after Jesus had spoke, the crowd was tired. It was getting late. No one had eaten for quite a while. So Jesus turns to his disciples and asks them, "Where can we buy enough food to feed all these people?" He was testing them because he knew what he was going to do. And seeing this impossible task, the disciples panic, and between themselves, they want to send everyone home. They try to convince Jesus to do the same. But he smiles at them for their lack of faith, as if to say, this is nothing. I got this. Don't you yet know who I am? Then a young boy comes forth and presents Jesus with all that he has, 5 loaves and 2 fish. The disciples think this wouldn't even be enough to feed the 12 of us, would it? And wanted again to send the people away. But then Jesus instructs them to have the people recline in groups. Then he takes the loaves and he breaks them and he gives thanks and distributes them to the people. And as we heard, there were 12 baskets of food left over, enough for each of the apostles to have their own. Today, we begin the first of 5 weeks of the Bread of Life discourse, where Jesus tells us and shows us over and over that he is the bread of life. I spoke of images of God earlier, but Jesus wants us to have that image of him as being the bread of life. Yes, the bread of life. That whenever we are tired or hungry, spiritually or emotionally, like the crowd in today's gospel, we are to feed on Christ, to get our strength and nourishment from him, as he does provide us with all that we need. And he truly is the bread of life. Yes, on that great lawn that day, Jesus gave of himself fully. He fed the people with his words and then with his body, just as he does each and every week here at this Eucharistic table. You know, when we look at some of these worldwide problems and see them as being insurmountable, we tend to say to ourselves, how can I possibly make a difference? I can't feed millions of people. But if we, people here at St. Margaret Mary, raised enough money to feed several thousand, and if every church in Louisville did the same, we'd have enough to feed millions and millions of people, at least one meal. And imagine if every faith community in the entire country did the same. That would be enough food to feed millions and millions of people every day for a year. We have to work together for this to happen. Helping Hands has provided the logistics, but we have to work together for this to happen. All they need is for us to do our part. So please, let's all work together to get this done. We can do it, as when we work together, we can make a difference. God bless.